Ron smiled at the thought of babysitting an infant version of Dee Dee. He enjoyed being her daddy and taking care of her as if she was a toddler. He could easily imagine how much fun it would be if she was transformed into a real baby. She grinned broadly and said, "It would serve you right if I did." 24 hours of changing dirty diapers would take that silly grin off of your face. Ron laughed and Dee Dee got up from the table to see her new mobile. Dee Dee looked at the lamp and said, "You know, that crystal looks like there's a light behind it. It must be acting like a prism. I hadn't noticed that before." The crystal on the lamp was glimmering red in the center, apparently diffracting the sunbeam that fell on its surface. Ron noticed as he turned that the lamp seemed to waver slightly in the sunlight as if it was an insubstantial mirage. The sunlight must be heating the lamp up and causing the air around the lamp to diffract the light, he thought to himself as he followed Dee Dee into the nursery. They were about halfway there when Dee Dee's pink blouse seemed to take on a life of its own. Ron stopped in horrified fascination as he watched the back of the blouse get longer and crawl over Dee Dee's bottom and down the back of her legs. Her slacks seemed to be alive too. They slithered down her ankles and started forming gathers around the tops of her feet. When she felt the cuffs hit her ankles, Dee Dee halted and looked down to see what was happening. Suddenly, her loosening waistband gave way and her slacks slid down her legs to pool around her feet. Dee Dee's body started to shrink in upon itself, getting shorter with each passing second. Dee Dee turned and looked at Ron with a helpless expression on her face as she perceived that her vantage point was rushing towards the floor. It looked like everything in the room was growing taller and more distant. Dee Dee said with a rising tone of fear, "Dooney." Ron froze in amazement as Dee Dee's height was reduced by half and her blouse descended to the floor. She appeared to be growing younger by the minute. Dee Dee's limbs changed proportions and became shorter with respect to her body until they looked like a baby's legs and arms. Her long hair seemed to pull itself back into her scalp, leaving her face framed by the short ringlets of early childhood. The lines of maturity in her face vanished and were replaced by the soft skin of babyhood as her cheeks became chubby with baby fat. Dee Dee swayed uncertainly on her feet for a moment and then fell backwards to land on her bottom. She looked up at Ron's face for a moment in surprise and then began to cry. Ron was stunned. His wife had turned into an infant before his eyes. He knelt down beside her and removed the blouse which was draped tent-like over her torso. Ron turned her around to face him and said, "Dee Dee. Are you all right? Speak to me, Dee Dee." "Do, Nogga," came the melodious nonsensical reply from Dee Dee's nearly toothless mouth. Dee Dee's expression became puzzled and she tried to talk to Ron again, saying, "Mgga, do." When she realized that the only thing that was emerging from her mouth was a high-pitched baby's babble, her face clouded over with a look of extreme frustration and she began weeping again.